On TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News. No spin, no bias, no censorship. I'm Dan Wootton, and breaking tonight. As opposition MPs once again line up to bash Boris over Partygate, when are we finally going to draw a line under this saga and accept the Prime Minister's apology?
And I take this opportunity on the first available sitting day to repeat my wholehearted apology to the House.
End this now for the good of the country. That's the theme of my digest. Coming up in just a few moments, I'll also get the superstar panel's thoughts on the PM's parliamentary flogging. Tonight, they are former Daily Star editor and current columnist Dawn Neeson, Conservative commentator Calvin Robinson, and Sunday Mirror political editor Nigel Nelson. Plus, as Ian Blackford proves the rank hypocrisy of the SNP by calling out Boris for his COVID rule break.
A law-breaking Prime Minister. Just dwell on this. A Prime Minister who has broken the law.
Should Nicola Sturgeon resign for her mask mistake after campaigning for the PM to go? We'll thrash that out in The Clash at 9:20 tonight. Will the ability to define a woman decide who emerges victorious at the ballot box? Dame Jenny Murray, the legendary former host of Women's Hour, who was banned by the BBC from covering trans issues, is let loose on that at 10:20. As the British Soap Awards axe male and female categories. Is this the ultimate proof that ITV and the entire soap world have gone completely woke? Coronation Street royalty Charlie Lawson, aka Jim McDonald, sounds off in Uncancelled at 10:40. After Joe Biden's disturbing new behaviour at a White House Easter event, Democrats need to invoke the 25th Amendment for the good of the world. Well, Nigel Farage thinks so. He'll be revealing why at 9:30. Is the thought of a Diane Abbott Park replacing a tribute to Prime Minister William Gladstone proof that woke warriors are out of control? I have to say it's the most ridiculous thing I've heard in a long time, and political firebrand Anne Widdecombe will weigh in this latest attempt to erase our history on tonight's Outsider at 9:45. As Justin Welby wades into the Rwanda row and our very own Calvin Robinson has his priesthood dreams shattered by the Church of England over his GB News role, has religion gone woke? And does Jacob Rees-Mogg right to order civil servants back to the office after discovering up to 3/4 of staff are still at home? I obviously say hell yes. Plus, would you buy a train ticket from this man?
Tell you about a great offer coming to you. It's the Great British Rail Sale.
All of that and more coming up in the Media Buzz at 10 p.m. and 10:30 this evening. Plus, of course, you'll get your first look at tomorrow's newspapers throughout the show, and a brand new Greatest Britain and Union Jackass will be crowned before the night is out. This is Dan Wootton tonight. Let's go. Just one thing first, though. Happy Easter. It is great to be back with you. Thank you to Patrick Christus for sitting in last night. And we have a big week ahead of big exclusives and bold opinions. Make sure you're here at this time tomorrow night, because look at who's about to give evidence in the lockdown inquiry.
He's the architect of Britain's COVID-19 lockdowns.
These measures are not advice. They are rules and will be enforced.
He's the man who's been battling to save our civil liberties from the very start.
There's absolutely no excuse not to return to normal life immediately.
Now Matt Hancock and Dan Wootton are going head-to-head over the most controversial measures of the pandemic. What regrets, if any, does the former Health Secretary have about his COVID battle plan? Were the lives and livelihoods destroyed by lockdown worth the sacrifice? And has he opened the door to further assaults on our civil liberties?
Everybody now has it in their power to save lives and protect the NHS. Home is now the front line.
It's Matt Hancock's turn to give evidence in the lockdown inquiry.
The true cost of lockdown is about to hit the world hard.
Coming up on Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. to 11 p.m. on GB News.
It's going to be a fascinating and important conversation, so make sure you're with us for that tomorrow from 9 p.m. But coming up tonight, my take on the opposition's desperation over Partygate. And then my superstar panel weigh in. Let's have a look at them. The former editor at the Daily Star, Dawn Neeson, the Conservative commentator, Calvin Robinson, and the political editor of the Sunday Mirror, Nigel Nelson. But before all of that, on a busy news day, Polly Middlehurst is here with the latest.
Dan, thank you. The top story tonight on GB News, the Conservative MP and former Chief Whip Mark Harper has published a letter saying he's lost confidence in Boris Johnson and he's no longer worthy of being Prime Minister. That comes after Boris Johnson apologised to MPs for breaking COVID laws during lockdown in June 2020. He addressed the Commons today for the first time since he was fined.
As soon as I received the notice, I acknowledged the hurt and the anger. And I said that people had a right to expect better of their Prime Minister. And I repeat that, Mr. Speaker, again in the House now.
Well, here's how the Labour leader, Sir Keir Starmer, responded to that.
What a joke. Even now, as the latest mealy-mouthed apology stumbles out of one side of his mouth, a new set of deflections and distortions pour from the other. But the damage is already done. It's what he does. It's who he is. He knows he's dishonest and incapable of changing.
Well, MPs will decide on Thursday whether the Prime Minister should face a parliamentary investigation into claims that he misled Parliament. Boris Johnson won't be present at the vote. Instead, he's going ahead with a planned trip to meet India's Prime Minister on that day. Well, also in the Commons this afternoon, the Home Secretary defended plans to send asylum seekers to Rwanda. Priti Patel said access to the UK should be based on need and not on the ability to pay people smugglers. She also told MPs the new bill complies with national and international legal obligations.
This type of illegal migration puts unsustainable pressures on our public services and local communities. Every day, the broken asylum system costs the taxpayer almost £5 million in hotel accommodation alone. And as the Prime Minister, Mr. Speaker, said last week, we cannot sustain a parallel illegal system. Our compassion may be infinite, but our capacity to help people is not.
Meanwhile, Ukrainian forces have repelled numerous Russian advances today, despite an increase in shelling along the Donbass line of control in the east of the country. That's according to the UK Ministry of Defence. That comes as Boris Johnson stressed the need for further military support to be sent to Ukraine during a call with fellow G7 leaders. The United States says 7 flights carrying weapons will head to Europe within the next 24 hours. The UN Secretary-General, Antonio Guterres, is calling for a 4-day pause in fighting to give civilians a chance to get out.
Humanitarian needs are dire. People do not have food, water, supplies to treat the sick or wounded, or simply to live day to day. More than 12 million people need humanitarian assistance in Ukraine today. And of those, more than 1/3 are in Mariupol, Kherson, Donetsk and Luhansk.
Those are your latest news headlines on TV, online and on your radio via DAB+. You're with GB News, and it's time now for Dan Wootton Tonight.
Oh, it felt like Groundhog Day, didn't it? Another never-ending, nasal-gazing session in Parliament as a host of opposition MPs lined up to bash the Prime Minister over Partygate. Look, I mean, I was angry about Partygate for all of 5 minutes about 4 months ago. Of course, those at Number 10 making the abhorrent and inhumane lockdown laws shouldn't have been breaking them. The rules were an ass, and there should now be an amnesty, I say, on all COVID fines. But I'm sorry, this is now nothing more than a highly politicised mainstream media and Labour Lib Dem SNP stitch-up to force a democratically elected and highly successful Prime Minister from office. Think of everything going on in the world. A European war, a once-in-a-lifetime generation cost of living crisis, the recovery from an unprecedented modern pandemic exacerbated by never-ending lockdowns, constant attacks on Britain's history and the explosion of cancel culture. But opposition MPs, and a couple of Tories, it has to be said, will use Parliament to wage this phony war. To hell with the consequences to the country. To hell with the consequences for Ukraine, too. I mean, Putin. He would delight in a damaging and destabilising Tory leadership election contest involving half of the cabinet and dragging on for months. At some point, we've got to draw a line under this and accept Boris Johnson's apology as genuine. I certainly thought he was in the House this evening.
And I take this opportunity on the first available sitting day to repeat my wholehearted apology to the House. As soon as I received the notice, I acknowledged the hurt and the anger. And I said that people had a right to expect better of their Prime Minister. And I repeat that, Mr. Speaker, again in the House now.
Boris then moved on to talk about the important issues of Ukraine and energy independence.
And it is precisely because I know that so many people are angry and disappointed that I feel an even greater sense of obligation to deliver on the priorities of the British people and to respond in the best traditions of our country to Putin's barbaric onslaught against Ukraine.
But when Keir Starmer responded, there was not one word of anything other than Partygate.
What a joke. Even now, as the latest mealy-mouthed apology stumbles out of one side of his mouth, a new set of deflections and distortions pour from the other. The public have made up their mind. They don't believe a word the Prime Minister says. This isn't some fixable glitch in the system. It's the whole point. He doesn't respect the sacrifice of the British public. He is a man without shame.
Keir Starmer doesn't care about what's best for this country. He cares about politics and nothing more. Boris was right to remind him he was previously a nodding dog for Jeremy Corbyn.
Looking past the member for Lichfield and the nodding dogs in the Cabinet, there are many decent, honourable members on the benches opposite.
And when he talks about nodding dogs, Mr. Speaker, I'd remind the House that there was a certain nodding dog who sat nodding in the previous Labour shadow cabinet, Mr. Speaker, that would happily have installed the honourable member for Islington North and made, I think, a disastrous mistake in the security of our country at a very difficult time. This government.
There are actually two key exchanges for me in the House today. These are exchanges you're not going to see on the BBC or ITV or Sky News because they don't fit the narrative. First, this from Peter Bone.
On Thursday, sir, following your announcements this morning, this House has got to decide whether to refer the Prime Minister to the Privileges Committee. There is only one issue. Did the Prime Minister deliberately mislead the House? Could I ask the Prime Minister, did you deliberately mislead the House at the dispatch box?
No, Mr. Speaker.
Key point. There was also this from Deputy Chair of the COVID Recovery Group, Steve Baker.
Is that justice leading into mercy relies on a very, very old-fashioned concept, and that is repentance. What assurance can he give us that nothing of this kind will ever happen again?
I'm heartily sorry, as I have said, and I wish it had not happened, and I wish that things had been totally different. What I have already done, as the House will know, is taken steps to change the way we do things in number 10. But that in itself is not enough. I accept full responsibility myself for my actions.
What more do you want? There's a man sincerely admitting fault but determined to move on. We especially must, given no one seems to give a damn that the Scottish First Minister Nicola Sturgeon broke her own COVID rules at the weekend by frolicking at a hairdresser's unmasked. She was warned by the police without anyone seeming to give such hypocrisy a second thought. So tonight, let me be clear, I accept the Prime Minister's apology. A fixed penalty notice is the equivalent of a speeding fine. Perspective is required. He accepted a damn birthday cake from his colleagues in a working bubble. For the good of the country, we must now move on from Partygate. To respond now, my superstar panel. Former editor, current columnist at the Daily Star, Dawn Neeson, the Conservative commentator, Calvin Robinson, and the political editor of the Sunday Mirror, Nigel Nelson. Calvin, should we move on? Do we need to forgive?
Easy answer, yes. He's apologised, we should forgive. But I think what this is people haven't seen any outrageous videos from Ukraine lately, so they're looking for something to be outraged about. Let's go back to Partygate. Like, we always need something. We need a big buzz to be upset about. I think Boris Johnson, if he's going to apologise for anything, it should be for the laws themselves and not for breaking them, because we all broke them. They were ridiculous laws.
Nigel Nelson, you don't believe the public should forgive Boris Johnson?
No, I don't, and they appear not to be. The latest poll is showing about three-quarters of the public think he ought to go. I think you have to start from not the constant, endless apologies today, was the only thing on his script, but go back to where he started from, which was there were no parties. Then, if there were parties, he didn't attend them, he didn't know about them, and then...
Do you think...
He went to parties and then said they were work events, and they stuck to the rules.
I just want to clarify that, because do you genuinely think, do you seriously think a bunch of staff members walking into a room with a cake in a Tupperware box that never actually left the Tupperware, with a few cans of beers that were actually never opened, do you seriously think that's a party? He was there for less than 10 minutes.
Yes, but it's still a party. Rishi Sunak, who I think probably was rather harshly treated, and he sort of stuck his head round the door and had a soft drink. But Boris did break the rules there. It was a party. There were others which the police are still looking at, some of them far more raucous, some with actually more booze there. What is extraordinary about this idea of a workplace is that you seem to be a workplace which serves cheese and wine willy-nilly, where tables are groaning with alcohol. The only other workplace at the time that would have had that would be a pub, and they were all closed. It should have been crystal clear to the people who worked there the rules were broken.
Understand the hypocrisy. Nigel Nelson, why does your newspaper, though, have such a visceral, personal hatred of Boris Johnson?
I don't think we do. I don't think it's a hatred thing.
It seems to be.
Pardon?
It seems to be.
Well, we certainly we opposed him becoming Prime Minister. We oppose him now. We don't think he's actually very good at the job. Because
can I tell you my theory? This is all about...
I'm sure you will.
This is all about Brexit, isn't it?
No. Everyone sort of brings everything back to Brexit. The view of our newspaper is that we argued for Remain. We lost the argument. I accept that. And now we must get on with Brexit. So that I still think the decision was a mistake, but it doesn't mean that I'm now not foursquare behind trying to make Brexit work.
That's good. Dawn, I've left you till last on this one because you can be the deciding vote. Because actually, for quite some time, you were absolutely livid with Boris Johnson over this.
and I still am absolutely.
You still am. You're still as angry, even all of these months on.
Yeah, but it's not about a damn birthday cake, Dan. I sort of agree with Calvin in this one. The only apology I want to hear out of Boris Johnson's mouth is the one where he accepts that the nonsensical, insane, cruel and deliberately terrifying rules that he put this country under by just listening to scaremongering doom-mongers, constantly living in a worst-case scenario, ruining people's lives. I want him to apologise for that. He can apologise to his blue in the face about how many parties, and let's face it, I think there was 6 more that he's probably potentially going to be in trouble for. He can apologise to his blue in the face. I don't care, to be honest with you, about the parties. What I care is about the misery he inflicted on this country. And, you know, at the beginning, maybe at the beginning of COVID, we weren't a bit sure, maybe that was necessary. But as we went on, Dan, to stick to this scaremongering, this deliberately terrorising people, you know, I know people that are still agoraphobic because of that. Don't go out, save the NHS. And it's like, hold on, no, I want the NHS to start saving us. And the fact that he terrorised an entire population, I want an apology for that.
I agree with that. But you don't want him to resign?
I don't want him to resign, no, purely because I don't want Nicola Sturgeon to resign either. I mean, I am no great fan of either of them, but I think at the moment where we are with everything else going on in the country, I think, as you said, I think Putin would be absolutely thrilled if we got rid of Boris Johnson. And I honestly don't know who would take his place. I know that's not a reason to get rid of anybody, by the way, because there's no one waiting in the wings. But I don't think there is.
Well, it sort of is.
It is.
It actually sort of is, because this was a bloke elected in a landslide. And actually, we have a democratic process in this country. The voters can give Boris a bloody nose on the 5th of May if they want to in the local elections. Perhaps if it's a catastrophe that night, then there'll be certain MPs within the Tory party who question their decision. But I really feel the campaign by the left-wing media and by this horrible cabal of Labour, the SNP and the Lib Dems to subvert democracy has to end. And I know that's what Partygate is about. It is. And personally, I know Nigel disagrees, but I think it's about Brexit.
And Tory MPs you have to add in there.
Of course. And, you know, and I will say, I just want to quickly mention Mark Harper, because this is a man who I have great respect for. He was absolutely spectacular as the chair of the COVID recovery group. I genuinely believe one day he could be a fantastic Prime Minister. But I disagree with the decision that he made today to send in his no confidence letter in the Prime Minister. But I do absolutely respect his reasons for doing so. Dawn Neeson, Calvin Robinson, Nigel Nelson, my superstar panel, and they will be here with me all evening, which is great news. But also still to come, after Joe Biden displays what's been described as disturbing new behaviour. I mean, I'm going to play it so you can judge for yourself. I found it disturbing. At a White House Easter event, do Democrats need to invoke the 25th Amendment for the good of the world? Well, Nigel Farage thinks so. He's going to reveal why at 9:30. But up next in The Clash, should rule-breaching Nicola Sturgeon resign after urging Boris Johnson to go over Partygate? We'll thrash that out in The Clash in just a few minutes, but I want to know what you think on this. Dan at gbnews.uk. Tweet me at GBNews. We've got our poll running there too. The results after the break.
Hello again, I'm Stephen Keats and I've got your latest Met Office forecast for you. Showers from Tuesday generally fading away with some fog for parts of Northern Ireland, and it's quite a chilly night across the northern half of the UK. So here's the showers across parts of South Wales, the West Country, central southern England, pulling away to the southwest, tending to fizzle out over the next few hours. Some fog patches developing across Northern Ireland with light winds given the showers from earlier today. And for northern Scotland, it's a fairly clear night here. And here's where we'll see the lowest temperatures, a touch of frost, certainly in some sheltered glens, not quite so cold further south. Now, a chilly start in Scotland underneath this ridge of high pressure extending down from Scandinavia. These weather fronts out in the Atlantic, not really making too much in the way of progress eastwards into the UK during Wednesday. So a bright start across Scotland, some sunshine to come here. The fog across Northern Ireland soon lifting through Wednesday morning. And elsewhere, where we've got various areas of cloud, these will tend to break up and tend to disperse as the day goes on. Elsewhere, where we start off sunny, a little bit of fair weather cloud developing. Perhaps the cloud thick enough by the Wednesday afternoon for a few showers across parts of Wales, western and southwest England. For most places, though, it will be a warmer day than what we saw during Tuesday. Temperatures close to 20 degrees in the south, cooler, though, along those North Sea coasts. And then a fine evening to come for Wednesday night into Thursday with, again, lots of clear weather around for many places. Some areas of cloud drifting into the North Sea coast of both England and Scotland. It could be quite misty and murky, particularly around the coast of eastern Scotland by the time we get to first thing Thursday. Again, cold enough for a touch of frost in some rural areas in the north, but for most towns and cities, Those temperatures holding up between around 4 and 8 Celsius. And then for Thursday, well, it's slow changes really, not too much different compared to what we'll see on Wednesday. Perhaps a bit more cloud in certain parts of the country, particularly central and eastern areas, and it could be quite grey and misty around some coasts of eastern Scotland and northeast England. Elsewhere, though, west is generally best for sunshine. That's where we'll see the highest temperatures too. So a bit of a mixed bag for sunshine amounts on Thursday, more cloud generally for Friday and Saturday, and those temperatures just coming down a touch.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes & Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes & Kerr.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle and a little bit of levity.
That's the question.
That's two questions, actually. That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Patrick Christie's.
And I'm Mercy Moroki.
Make sure that you join us Monday to Thursday, 10 a.m. until midday, right here on GB News for To The Point.
We're not afraid to talk about the topics that matter to you or the big topics that always matter.
We cover absolutely everything, from the breaking political stories of the day to law and order, what's going on in the channel. We're not afraid to hold people to account.
We always make sure we include your views on our show.
Indeed, if you're thinking it, you can guarantee that we're saying it. So make sure you join the conversation with us, 10 a.m. until midday, Monday to Thursday for To The Point on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News. Nigel Farage and Anne Widdecombe coming up. A time now for The Clash. For months, the hysterical SNP, led by Nicola Sturgeon, have been hyperventilating about why the Prime Minister must be undemocratically deposed as a consequence of the media's Partygate campaign. So, of course, when scheming Sturgeon was caught breaking her own COVID rules unmasked in a busy barbershop, she displayed the same, quote, basic decency she has so vociferously demanded from Boris Johnson and resigned, right? Wrong. Her barefaced COVID hypocrisy has been exposed as she passed off her transgression of the ludicrous mask laws she inflicted on Scots as inadvertent and escaped a police fine. Now, as you all know, I actually don't believe anyone should be fined or lose their job for breaking inhumane COVID laws. But how can SNP figures like Westminster leader Ian Blackford make holier-than-thou statements like this attacking Boris while still defending their dear leader?
The Prime Minister has broken the very laws he wrote. To try and argue that he did not know he had broken his own laws would be laughable if it wasn't so serious. A law-breaking Prime Minister. Just dwell on this. A Prime Minister who has broken the law.
I mean, the hypocrisy, truly astounding. I wrote a column on this today for the Mail Online and said unless she is prepared to resign for her COVID law break, scheming Sturgeon's demand for Boris to quit is nothing more than laughable political posturing and should be roundly ignored. But what do you think? Should Sturgeon resign for her COVID law breach, given she has called on Boris to go for the same thing? Send me your thoughts to Dan at gbnews.uk or tweet at gbnews. You can vote in our poll while you're there, and I'll bring you those results very shortly. But first, giving their view on this tonight, political writer and anti-lockdown pundit, he happens to be Scottish as well, James Melville, the human rights campaigner Peter Tatchell, and the political commentator Suzanne Evans. So, Suzanne, look, as I say, I would not want anyone to have to go for such a minor breach of the rules. But the point is, Sturgeon has said quite clearly it doesn't matter how small the law breach is. If you're responsible for making the laws, if you break just one of them, you're out. You've got to resign. So surely she has to follow her own advice.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with you, Dan. Nicola Sturgeon was one of the most lockdown extremists that we've had in this country. I mean, Mark Drakeford in Wales, I think, ran her a very close second. But let's be honest, she was absolutely draconian about these lockdown laws. And it's not the first time that she's broken her own rules. She broke them back at a funeral in December 2020 when she didn't wear a mask. She broke them again in February 2021 when she went maskless at a party at a village hall. And now this particular breach. Now, I totally agree with you. I think masks are absolutely useless. They don't work to prevent the spread of COVID. It was a pointless law. It was a law that should never have been introduced in any country of the UK. But the fact is, Nicola Sturgeon introduced it, hammered it home harder than most, and now has the hypocrisy to turn around and say, well, Boris should resign for effectively a party that he didn't know was going to happen by all accounts. But she, for the third breach of the rules, so effectively the third time the police have come round to Holyrood and knocked on her door, she's saying, no, I've done nothing wrong. I'm terribly sorry. It was a dreadful mistake. I'm sorry. It doesn't wash. If you're going to live by a political rule that says I will attack my opponents for any little mistake that they make and demand their resignation, I'm afraid you should also fall by that same rule.
Yeah, I mean, Peter Tatchell, when Margaret Ferrier, the SNP MP, who travelled by train between Scotland and London, even though she had tested positive for COVID, after that happened, Sturgeon went up to a pulpit in Scotland and said, trust me, it's one of the easiest things in the world in politics to call for tough consequences when one of your own opponents break the rules. That's not hard for any of us. The litmus test, though, is whether you're prepared to do the same when it's one of your own breaking the rules.
Well, absolutely. Lawbreakers are not supposed to be lawmakers, or vice versa.
Yeah, but Sturgeon's broken this law.
Must obey the laws that they have made. I do think, however, that although Nicola Sturgeon is wrong, and she did very promptly apologise, she didn't try to cover up like Boris Johnson did. She did make a fulsome apology very swiftly and immediately. I think that's different from Boris, because Boris tried for weeks and weeks to deny there'd been any law breaking. He tried to cover up. He misled Parliament. He misled MPs. He said all along that the full guidance, the law had been followed. He gave absolute cast iron assurances. So I do think that, you know, I'm not going to say whether anybody should resign on this particular point, but I do think that it is really important that those who make the law must not break the law.
Well, James Melville,
if they do, they must apologise promptly and not try to cover up as Boris Johnson did.
But James Melville, we only have this apology from Nicola Sturgeon because she was caught. Let's just be real about this. She's clearly walking around Scotland all the time without a mask while muzzling her population. It just feels wrong.
Yeah, it's gross hypocrisy. But it's not just her. I mean, it's whataboutery, and I'm doing whataboutery right now. It's so many politicians in so many contexts have broken the rules that they themselves set. It was even happening at COP, where Nicola Sturgeon was with Kate Middleton, and she was not wearing a mask then. Macron and Trudeau have been examples where they've not been wearing masks. But the biggest thing is not about apologies per se about breaking the rules. That's wrong. While everyone else is locking down and adhering to rules, whether they believe in them or not, what they should be doing is a bigger apology, not about avoidance of their own rules, but apologising to everyone for putting us through those rules in the first place.
Yeah. I totally agree with that. But Suzanne Evans, all I want is fairness across the board. And if Sturgeon believes that any leader should resign no matter how small the indiscretion, then she should be put under pressure to resign. It's not that I believe she should resign, because I don't think Boris Johnson should resign. I just want her to deliver to the standards that she is trying to set to the Tories.
Yeah, how utopian of you, Dan, to want fairness across the board. As you know, that never happens in politics.
No,
I mean,
of
here
course
we have
not.
Boris Johnson fined a measly £60. Nicola Sturgeon apparently not going to be fined anything at all. I recall there were 2 teenagers who were fined £2,000 for having a snowball fight back in that first lockdown. I mean, that's not fair. And I think I'm afraid it is true, isn't it, that we see some of the great and the good who made these laws getting off with a mere slap on the wrist when other people have actually been fined very punitively. I think every single COVID fine that's ever been levied should be, frankly, wiped clean, erased. People should get their money back. These laws were stupid. We're now seeing the devastating impact of lockdowns on cancer deaths, on the NHS waiting list, on suicides, on all manner of issues that really drive home just how dangerous they actually were to people. It was a mess. And like you know, I was listening earlier to your programme when Dawn Neeson said what she wants is an apology for inflicting any of these laws in the first place and an absolute guarantee that this never happens again. And that's what I want to.
am there for that. But what this is about, Peter Tatchell, is the idea that no matter how small the law is, someone should lose their entire career. And that's what I disagree with, because, Peter Tatchell, surely you wouldn't be saying if a politician were to break the speeding limit, they should lose their job. And in theory, that is a law that they have enacted. There has to be a sense of perspective here, doesn't there?
Oh, absolutely. I don't think small and minor breaches of law is a grounds for any politician to lose their job. It should only be reserved for very serious cases. I'm not sure that Nicola Sturgeon actually said that Boris or others should lose their job over the smallest breaches. I don't think she actually said that.
She said, well, she did. She said Boris Johnson must resign. The basic values of integrity and decency essential to the proper working of any parliamentary democracy demand that he go. She said it was actually just basic decency for Boris to quit.
I think it was also in connection with his repeated denials, his dishonest representation to Parliament, his misleading of the public. I think that's what really made it bad for Boris.
Although James Melville, he says, James Melville...
That'd be one thing. But actually, his persistent denial and evasion and refusal initially to apologise.
But James Melville, he says he didn't realise he was breaking the law.
Your Boris said today it was an unreserved apology. It wasn't. It was a reserved apology. He caveated it with saying, oh, basically, I was doing lots of meetings and I was far too busy, and we were kind of alluding to the fact that he was above it all because he's Boris Johnson. Now, this is the problem. It's not just Johnson, it's all of them. Highfalutin politicians who think that they can basically set rules that we plebs have to adhere to. Meanwhile, they do not adhere to the rules themselves. Meanwhile, Suzanne pointed out, we've gone through 2 years of businesses closing, schools closing, spikes in mental health, huge collateral damages in terms of just the national confidence in this country, where people have just been trying to do the right thing, whether they believed in the restrictions and lockdowns or not. And we're sick and tired of our politicians still scoring points of each other about who broke what law.
Good point. Perfect point to end on, because I completely agree with you. That was the political writer and pundit James Melville, the human rights campaigner Peter Tatchell, and political commentator Suzanne Evans. So who do you agree with? Well, Debbie on Twitter says, if Boris resigns, then she should resign. The least Police Scotland should do is give her a fine. But here she is once again getting away with it. You can't have one rule for Boris and another for her. From Lee on Twitter, I voted no because this tit-for-tat playground stuff is pathetic. The rules should never have been allowed in the first place. And Jack says if she is being hypocritical enough to say Boris should go over Partygate, she should also resign for breaking her ridiculous rules. And 85% of you actually agree that Sturgeon should quit simply because she urged the PM to go. This is an issue of hypocrisy. 15% of you say she should stay in post. Now, coming up is the thought of a Diane Abbott Park replacing a tribute to Prime Minister William Gladstone. Proof woke warriors are out of control. Political firebrand Anne Widdecombe weighs in as tonight's Outsider at 9:45. But next, do Democrats in America need to invoke the 25th Amendment for the good of the world after Joe Biden's erratic and truly bizarre behaviour at the White House Easter event? Well, that's what Nigel Farage is proposing. He'll be here after the break.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle and a little bit of levity.
That's the question. That's two questions, actually.
That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Patrick Christie's.
And I'm Mercy Moroki.
Make sure that you join us Monday to Thursday, 10 a.m. until midday, right here on GB News for To The Point.
We're not afraid to talk about the topics that matter to you or the big topics that always matter.
We cover absolutely everything, from the breaking political stories of the day to law and order, what's going on in the channel. We're not afraid to hold people to account.
We always make sure we include your views on our show.
Indeed, if you're thinking it, you can guarantee that we're saying it. So make sure you join the conversation with us, 10 a.m. until midday, Monday to Thursday for To The Point on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News. What the Farage time now, and nearly 2 years on from taking office, there are growing fears it's not just US foreign policy that seems to be on a downward trajectory. Questions have been raised yet again over President Biden's cognitive capabilities thanks to a round of videos from a White House Easter event at the weekend. So here's the leader of the free world being told he's not allowed to read a children's book before being ordered by his wife Jill to stay when she had finished.
Okay, so I'm going to quickly read Brown Bear, so you're all not soaking wet.
And they're not going to let me read it all.
I'll let you, here, you can start us off. Okay, just stay.
She's telling me just sit, don't move. She's a teacher.
I'm the teacher, you know.
She's a teacher.
Oh, it gets weirder. Later on, none other than the Easter Bunny, who it turns out was actually a Biden communications bot in disguise, was scrambled to pull the president away after he went on a tangent about Pakistan and Afghanistan. He was also reminded to wave as he and the First Lady finished a speech from the White House balcony.
Pakistan should not, and Afghanistan should be equal.
Oh, the Easter Bunny, Mr. President.
All right.
Wait.
Goodness me, so with the president needing close supervision at a kids' event, should Democrats entertain invoking the 25th Amendment for the good of America and the world, actually? Doing so would give VP Kamala Harris and the cabinet power to remove Biden with a majority vote if he's deemed no longer fit to stand. The 25th Amendment has only been used 3 times before, including in July 1985 when President Reagan ordered George H.W. Bush to take the reins for 8 hours while he underwent colon surgery. Now, Nigel Farage thinks we've reached that desperate stage, and he joins me now. Nigel, you look at those clips from over the weekend, something's wrong, something's seriously wrong.
Yes, I mean, look, you know, he just looks like an old duffer. And in one way, we can feel sorry for him because,
yes,
you know, we all know people, friends, family that have been through this terrible decline that dementia is, and it's a dreadful thing. And I'm not even going to make a joke of it because it's just a bit sad to witness. But here's the real point about why the 25th should be moved. The man has become a danger to world peace. Not just the decision to unilaterally withdraw from Afghanistan, to literally hand the country back to the very Taliban we'd fought, and we've been part of it too, for 20 years. But on his visit recently, he met those American troops in Poland, said to them, oh, you'll see how hard these Ukrainian guys fight when you get there. What? When there was talk of chemical weapons being employed, he said we would respond with chemical weapons. I mean, he is actually dangerous. And I don't even think Putin, to be frank, would have invaded Ukraine if it wasn't for the fact that he saw huge weakness in the Western world. So the man isn't just an old duffer. He's a danger to world peace. And the 25th really should be moved. Now, here's the bizarre thing. The Democrats won't do it because they fear Kamala Harris is even more incompetent and even more unpopular than Biden. And the Republicans aren't calling for it because despite the threat to world peace through this man's idiocy, they want him in place for the midterms because they know it's going to be a rout. And the odd thing about it is, Dan, when Trump was in office, any outlandish comment Trump made was immediately followed by the New York Times and CNN saying the 25th should be moved. So what you've got, and I was over in America last week for a couple of days, what you've got are quietly, round the back of their hands, people saying the 25th should be moved, but no one daring to say it publicly. But I think it's obvious, it's clear for all to see. And so many times now, he's answering a question, he wanders off in a different direction. I mean, frankly, it's pretty pitiful stuff.
Indeed, and I'm glad you mentioned the media, Nigel, because there's a dereliction of duty going on from them, isn't there? As you say, they were all over Trump, who we know years on from office is actually very mentally capable, very physically healthy these days as well. Yet the left-wing media in America, and let's be honest, that's the vast majority of the media in America, aren't talking about this.
Well, it isn't just media. I mean, we mustn't ever for one moment forget the power and the import of social media. I mean, just think about the Hunter Biden laptop. Think about the things that were on that laptop. Money from Moscow. I mean, that doesn't get talked about one little bit. Extraordinary contracts with Ukraine, with China. And the New York Times actually recently admitted that it was all true. And yet Twitter stopped the New York Post from publishing these stories. I mean, it was, in many ways, it was the most unfair election you have ever seen. Now, look, I know that Donald Trump's style isn't everybody's, and I get it. He's a New Yorker, he's brash, and he's all those things. But really, let's pray. Let's pray that Elon Musk puts together a consortium to take over Twitter, and we actually get some genuine, fair, free speech back into American politics, because my goodness me, it's needed. And of course, Dan, as you know, as well as I do, where America leads, we'd follow. Musk has got to get Twitter. This is a really, really important moment.
So you think the future of free speech for the entire Western world could be relying on this?
I think this is a very major moment. I mean, look, I'm very pleased to see Parler, Getter, and other social media channels that have set up and are trying to redress the balance. But the fact is, the inbuilt advantage that Twitter have already is so enormous. So the same applies to Facebook. The same applies to Instagram, TikTok. Don't even start me. And there is no doubt.
You're on TikTok now.
I am on TikTok, and I have no choice but to be on TikTok, because how else, Dan, can I speak to the sort of 16 to 24-year-old generation? And I want to do that, and I want to engage them in that, and I want to challenge them on many of the prejudices that they have, and I'm rather enjoying it, actually. And I'm also actually, by the way, quite pleasantly surprised, despite what they've been taught in school, college, and university, how many young people actually do have very sensible, proper views. I mean, it's actually rather encouraging when you start getting into that space and having that debate. Look, we want, if we believe in democracy as a principle, there have to be some ground rules on both sides. There has to be the ability for both sides to speak freely, to the great public who can then make decisions. So, yeah, as I say, I wish all the challengers well, but Twitter is a very, not for ordinary folk living their lives, but in terms of setting the media agenda, Twitter is very, very important. And I must say, I really believe that Musk is turning into something of a hero for the values that we at GBNews believe in and fight for. And, good for him and good luck to him too.
And it could level up the playing field ahead, Nigel, of a potential Trump run in 2024. Is that what you're expecting?
Well, I was at Mar-a-Lago. I
saw the photo. I saw the photo.
Yes. I got to tell you, Trump, he was just in the best form I have ever seen him. I mean, look at him, he's looking fitter, healthier, sharper than I think I've ever seen him. Now, obviously, he's not going to say that he's going to run again, because that starts to start regulatory clocks going and financial clocks going and all the rest of it. And I would never reveal any private conversation with the 45th president of the USA, but I will say this, he's running.
You heard it here first. Nigel Farage with brilliant insight into what could be one heck of an election in 2024. Thank you so much, Nigel. We'll speak next week. And, of course, Nigel back 7 o'clock tomorrow night here on GB News. But coming up, as Justin Welby wades into the Rwanda row and our very own Calvin Robinson has his priesthood dreams shattered by the Church of England over his GB News role, has religion gone woke? We'll debate. But first, the woke warriors are at it again, plotting a Diane Abbott park and erasing one of our great Prime Ministers, William Gladstone. Well, political firebrand Anne Whittaker, she's all fired up on this, and she'll be coming up straight after the break.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle and a little bit of levity.
That's the question. That's 2 questions, actually.
That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Patrick Christie's.
And I'm Mercy Moroki.
Make sure that you join us Monday to Thursday, 10 a.m. until midday, right here on GB News for To The Point.
We're not afraid to talk about the topics that matter to you, or the big topics that always matter.
We cover absolutely everything, from the breaking political stories of the day to law and order, what's going on in the channel. We're not afraid to hold people to account.
We always make sure we include your views on our show.
Indeed, if you're thinking it, you can guarantee that we're saying it. So make sure you join the conversation with us, 10 a.m. until midday, Monday to Thursday for To The Point on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News. A first look at tomorrow's newspaper front pages coming up at the top of the hour. But now, time for The Outsider with Anne Whittaker. And if you thought tearing down statues and renaming roads was the peak of the BLM movement, think again. A London park named after four-time Prime Minister William Gladstone could be rebranded Diane Abbott Park by a woke Labour council as part of its slavery review. In a move that's been branded indoctrination by Tory critics, lefty loons at Brent Town Hall could rename the 121-year-old Gladstone Park in tribute to the 35-year career politician who was more famed, let's be honest, for her trouble with arithmetic than stepping foot anywhere near government. While he spoke out for slave traders early in his career, Gladstone later described slavery as the foulest crime in history and approved of its abolition. So, Anne Widdecombe, I mean, Diane Abbott Park? Seriously, is this peak woke? Is this peak woke, Anne?
Well, it's certainly peak madness. I mean, I'm beginning to wonder if the entire country's gone mad. The idea that you remove the name of a historic Prime Minister such as Gladstone and you put in its place somebody whose parliamentary achievements are, to put it bluntly, negligible. And who indeed can't actually add up, as we found out when she was being asked about costing her own police policy. I just wonder what on earth is going on. Now, if people want to remove Gladstone's name, that's bad enough and silly enough. But really, then you would have thought they would have found somebody of equal stature to name the park after. It's just total insanity. Total.
And it is also proof that history is quite literally being erased now, because, you know, this park in northwest London has been named Gladstone Park since the year after his death in 1898. I mean, this is a historic park. This is not overturning a modern decision.
What we're effectively saying, or what the Labour Council is effectively saying, is that some people shouldn't exist. You know, they shouldn't be allowed to be remembered. And so we pretend they didn't exist. So we rewrite history so that we just sort of quietly, you know, erase their names. Now, you know, it's a bit like Stalinism in its way. You just sort of try and erase the past and pretend it didn't happen if it happens to be inconvenient. But in fact, the past is so much a part of the present. And you can't just pretend the past didn't happen. Gladstone himself moved, as you've just said, over the subject of slavery. Britain moved over slavery. Britain became an enormous force in the world for making sure that the abolition was actually carried out. And our navy, you know, patrolled the high seas, stopping slave ships. So Britain went through that process. Gladstone went through that process. That is part of our history and the history of the human races, that we move and we develop greater empathy and we develop greater morality. I mean, otherwise we would still be boiling people in oil. You know, we move and that is history. And these people seem to think, well, you can just rewrite it. You know, you can pretend some people didn't exist. Colston didn't exist. Now, Gladstone doesn't exist. It is a nonsense.
And I think you're completely right. We need to celebrate the fact this is a man who did have that evolution over the course of his life. I mean, I note the fact that actually by the end of his life, Anne, he had the abolition of slavery as one of the 10 greatest achievements of the previous 60 years. And there's the brilliant quote from him where he said it proved that the masses had been right and the classes had been wrong. I mean, I can't think of someone that we could learn from more.
Exactly, and you'd think they would put up a statue to him with that quote underneath and celebrate him. Instead of which, they're trying to pretend he didn't exist. And it is such nonsense. And it's something, I mean, the sad thing is the establishment is bowing down to this. It isn't just the loony left. You find this wherever you go. You know, instructions are issued about how you address people. I mean, good heavens above and the Lords now, you're not supposed to say ladies and gentlemen, you're supposed to say folks. Well, I mean, I think folks is very familiar and matey, and ladies and gentlemen is polite and respectful. But it's the sheer bowing down of the establishment to what is, quite honestly, rot. Total rot.
And
what's the matter with them?
Do you know what? I feel your frustration on this, Anne. And if Diane Abbott Park ever becomes a reality, I think that's going to be the moment that quite a few people just say enough is enough. Anne Widdecombe, thank you so much. We'll speak next weekend. It's 10 p.m. I'm Dan Wootton, and breaking tonight as top Tories, including Andrea Leadsom, step up to defend Priti Patel's Rwanda action plan following criticism by the Archbishop of Canterbury.
Even in the top echelons of the Church of England and in other faiths, who have completely forgotten, who seem to have completely forgotten the images of children lying drowned on our beaches.
So are we asking, has religion gone too woke? Our very own Calvin Robinson, who's had his priesthood dreams shattered by the Church of England over his GBNews role, will weigh in with the rest of my superstar panel, the former Daily Star editor, current columnist Dawn Neeson, and Sunday Mirror political editor Nigel Nelson at 10:30. Will the ability to define a woman decide who emerges victorious at the ballot box? Dame Jenny Murray, the legendary former host of Women's Hour, who was banned by the BBC from covering trans issues, is free to speak her mind on one of the biggest cultural talking points of today. Don't miss that at 10:20. As the British Soap Awards axe male and female categories, is this the ultimate proof that ITV and the entire soap world have gone completely woke? Coronation Street royalty Charlie Lawson, aka Jim McDonald, sounds off in Uncancelled at 10:40. Is Jacob Rees-Mogg right to order civil servants back to the office after discovering up to 3/4 of staff are still at home? Plus, should more of us start calling out Britain-hating comments like this by LBC's Natasha Devon?
I think we need to acknowledge that we're not a great country that everybody wants to come to. We're a silly little island that is struggling in almost every industry.
I can feel my rage boiling over. All that and more coming up in my media buzz throughout the next hour. Don't forget, you'll also get your first look at tomorrow's newspaper front pages as they land. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of Partygate, I'm afraid. And I'll reveal who I've chosen as tonight's Greatest Britain and Union Jackass at 10:50. But before all of that, the news headlines at 10 with Polly Middlehurst.
Dan, thank you. The top story. Boris Johnson today apologised to MPs for breaking COVID laws during lockdown during June 2020. He addressed the House of Commons for the first time since he was fined before holding a private meeting with Tory politicians. Conservative MP and former Chief Whip Mark Harper published a letter saying he had lost confidence in Boris Johnson and that he was no longer worthy of being Prime Minister. Boris Johnson said people had the right to expect better of their leader.
As soon as I received the notice, I acknowledged the hurt and the anger. And I said that people had a right to expect better of their Prime Minister. And I repeat that, Mr. Speaker, again in the House now.
Well, here's how the Labour leader, Sir Keir Starmer, responded.
What a joke. Even now, as the latest mealy-mouthed apology stumbles out of one side of his mouth, a new set of deflections and distortions pour from the other. But the damage is already done. It's what he does. It's who he is. He knows he's dishonest and incapable of changing.
Well, MPs will decide on Thursday whether the Prime Minister should face a parliamentary investigation into claims that he misled Parliament. Boris Johnson won't be there. Instead, he's going ahead with a planned trip to meet India's Prime Minister. Well, the Prime Minister is said to have accused the Archbishop of Canterbury of having misconstrued the government's policy of sending asylum seekers to Rwanda. Sources say that in a private meeting with Tory MPs, Boris Johnson accused Justin Welby of being less vociferous in his condemnation of President Putin than he was in his attack on the policy itself. It comes after the Home Secretary defended plans to send asylum seekers to Rwanda in the Commons today. Priti Patel saying access to the UK should be based on need and not on the ability of people to pay people smugglers. She also told MPs the new bill complies with both domestic and international legal obligations.
This type of illegal migration puts unsustainable pressures on our public services and local communities. Every day, the broken asylum system costs the taxpayer almost £5 million in hotel accommodation alone. And as the Prime Minister, Mr. Speaker, said last week, we cannot sustain a parallel illegal system. Our compassion may be infinite, but our capacity to help people is not.
Well, also today, Boris Johnson said G7 leaders had agreed to work together to find a long-term security solution to safeguard Ukraine's future. In a call with the US President Joe Biden and other G7 leaders, the Prime Minister stressed the need for further military support in the face of Russia's offensive on the eastern border in Ukraine. UK intelligence shows that Ukrainian forces have repelled numerous Russian advances today, despite an increase in shelling along the eastern Donbass line of control. The UN Secretary-General, Antonio Guterres, is calling for a 4-day pause in fighting to give civilians safe passage.
Humanitarian needs are dire. People do not have food, water, supplies to treat the sick or wounded, or simply to live day to day. More than 12 million people need humanitarian assistance in Ukraine today. And of those, more than 1/3 are in Mariupol, Kherson, Donetsk and Luhansk.
On TV, online and on your radio via DAB+, you're with GB News. Now more from Dan Wootton tonight.
Tomorrow's news tonight now on our Media Buzz. First couple of front pages have dropped. So let's look at the Metro first. I'm truly sorry, the Prime Minister says. It did not occur to me that I broke my own COVID rules at Downing Street Bash. Despite being urged to quit over Partygate, Bojo has said he feels obligated to stay on while the war in Ukraine rages. Also in The Independent, senior Tory MP and former Chief Whip Mark Harper today called on the Prime Minister to resign over his fine for Partygate. In his letter of no confidence, Harper accused Boris Johnson of asking Tory MPs to defend the indefensible. What's so interesting for me about the Mark Harper issue is that over the entire course of the pandemic, for 2 years, virtually all of the mainstream media ignored Mark Harper, who did the most brilliant job as the chair of the COVID recovery group, campaigning against lockdowns. Interesting, isn't it, that the moment he speaks out against Boris Johnson, he's on all of the front pages. Shame he didn't get the same coverage when he was speaking out against lockdowns. My superstar panel back with me now, former editor and the current columnist at the Daily Star, also the longest-serving female newspaper editor in Fleet Street history. Bigging you up, Dawn Neeson there. The Conservative commentator Calvin Robinson, and the political editor of the Nigel Nelson, the Sunday Mirror, Nigel Nelson. Nigel, are you the longest-serving political editor now on Fleet Street?
Yep.
How many years?
I'm coming up for 36 years in the House of Commons.
Wow. So you are historic as well.
I'm a monument.
Ancient monument.
Well, a lot of experience on my superstar panel tonight. I like it. Would you believe it? The blob ain't budging. As regular viewers will know, I've been calling for the privileged pencil pushers at the civil service to get off their ballotons, switch off loose women and get back into the office for months. And now Jacob Rees-Mogg, the Minister for Government Efficiency, has finally taken action, ordering civil servants back to work after discovering that up to 3/4 of workers are still tapping away at grimy laptops in their underwear. This is unbelievable. So in a letter to all Secretaries of State leaked to the Daily Telegraph, Rees-Mogg insisted that COVID was no longer an excuse for working from home, adding that it was time to, quote, realise the benefits of face-to-face collaborative working and the wider benefits for the economy. Now, this is what's great. Rees-Mogg also provided a league table of the percentage of office workers in each government department And good on the Department of International Trade. They've got the most people commuting in, as you can see here, followed by Health and Social Care and the Cabinet Office. But coming bottom of what I've dubbed the work from home league of shame, the Department of Education, where just 25%, a quarter of staff, how pathetic, are back in the office, followed by Work and Pensions and the Foreign, Commonwealth and Development Office. No wonder teachers have been so reluctant to go back to the classroom when all the stuffed shirts of the Department of Education have been lounging about at home. So, Rees-Mogg is making it his mission to end work-from-home culture. But should this be where his focus is? Dawn Neeson. I mean, I'm totally behind it, I have to say, so I'd say yes. But do you agree?
Yeah, of course I do. I don't understand why are they still working from home.
I know.
I really don't understand it at all. And at the same time as, I mean, and let's face it, a lot, you know, the high-paid civil servants in very, very comfortable homes, absolutely fine. But the youngsters, Dan, they're the ones that are suffering. If you're young and you're in shared housing with a little room, working from home is no fun at all. And youngsters need to be out there. They need to be learning. They need to get experience actually on the job, not tapping away in their underwear, which I'm sure they're probably not, on grimy laptops. That's just your weekend, Dan, by the way.
Oh, how dare you. Dawn, you know I hate working from home. Calvin, 25%. Come on, 25% of civil servants at the Education Ministry. What a joke.
And I know a lot of people there. I'm going to message them some banter later. But
well, it's officially the laziest department in the country.
A lot of civil servants are entitled, aren't they? Some people can't afford to work from home. Some people don't have the facilities to work from home. And Dawn mentioned the young people, quite right too. I think young people learn through osmosis. Young people learn from the experienced people around them. In the office, you pick up tips and tricks of the trade.
Exactly. So the experienced people are actually being very selfish, aren't they, by not turning up?
Not sharing their knowledge. But we're also, you know, it's a human experience. We're sociable people. We need to be around other people. Why is everyone obsessed with being at home on their own, isolated on their laptop all the time now? It's sad.
And you know what really annoys me as well? At the same time as they saying, I can't go into the office, I need to work from home, they're expecting the delivery drivers, the refuse collectors...
Oh, yeah, they've got to work.
People running a supermarket.
But they've got to go out and work.
They have to go out and work.
And so have you, Dan. I mean, you couldn't do this show from sitting in your bedroom or something like that.
But I even... with all of my journalists at work, my columns, I refuse to work from home. I don't believe in it as a
some people can work from home.
So you disagree with what Rees-Mogg is doing?
Absolutely. I mean, Jacob Rees-Mogg, we all know he lives in the 19th century, but he's learnt nothing from the last 2 years. And we've had a reset since COVID. A lot of us have discovered we can work from home.
The Great Reset, even some people would say.
Well, yeah, it's a long recess, yeah. I think when it comes down to civil servants, those who can work from home and want to work from home should.
Why? We don't want to reset.
Those who can't work from home, so for instance, DVLA, which has got a huge backlog, they deal with documents, so they've got to actually be in the office. Passport Office being another example, they should be back. If you can do your job from home, do it. I've changed my working practice since COVID. I would go into the House of Commons 5 days a week. I now go in 2 days, maybe 3 if I've got a meeting.
Don't tell me you're getting as many scoops.
Well, no, but it works differently because I might spend a day writing. So what is the point of me commuting all the way up to London to go and sit in my office and not see anybody, to write away and then commute back home? So that's the point. It's just it's flexible working. And for young people that you've mentioned, absolutely.
But they have to be surrounded by folk like you, Nigel, who have the experience and who can help guide them through. And if you're at home, it might be fine for you because you've had your storied and lengthy career, but you're not passing on your knowledge.
But there will be other people there, and there will still be people there. What I'm talking about is a kind of flexible working that we've learnt from COVID.
I don't like it, and I especially don't like it, by the way, when we're paying these people's wages. Get back to the office.
I do like
do some work.
A league table's always a good idea.
Exactly.
They're not being lazy, though, are they? I mean, I worked harder during lockdown.
I never believed that.
Before.
No, I never believed that. I never believed that. Do not tell me you work harder from home. I just do. I
did.
Believe it. I do not believe it. I'm sorry. Now, we know nothing matters more to the left than proving your woke credentials. And in 2022, somewhat depressingly, the quickest way to rack up Twitter likes from losers with "be kind" in their bio is to slag off your own country. Priti Patel's bold and humane plan to combat people smuggling across the channel by processing migrants, or some migrants, single male economic migrants in Rwanda, has provided the perfect opportunity to do just that. Enter Natasha Devon. She's a former government mental health champion, and she sure, despite that, does love to broadcast toxicity to the nation via the airwaves of LBC. Look.
I think we need to acknowledge that we're not a great country that everybody wants to come to. We're a silly little island that is struggling in almost every industry. And this is a classic example of where we're cutting off our nose to spite our stupid racist faces.
A silly little island?
Just because she's racist doesn't mean we are.
I know.
And if we're silly, why do so many people want to come to our silly little racist island?
Well, indeed. Indeed. I mean, the first thing I would say, by the way, to LBC is sack that woman because she's destroying your once great station. And actually, what she said is untrue. Last year's Sewell report found zero evidence of institutional racism in the UK and concluded that disparities between ethnic groups are caused by factors other than discrimination. A 2019 EU Minorities and Discrimination Survey found we're one of the least racist countries in Europe. Among the entire bloc, we had the lowest percentage of respondents of African heritage reporting they'd felt racially discriminated against. So, Calvin Robinson, I think we really have to start calling out the Britain haters, of course, and stop giving them these platforms.
This self-flagellation does no one any favours. We need to promote unity, not division. People like Natasha, every time I've been on LBC, it doesn't matter which host I've been on with, she's straight there on Twitter goading me, oh, this country's horrible, it's racist, everyone... Yeah. It's like, no, it's not. And if the further you perpetuate that, the more you make it so. They want it to be the case so that they can prove themselves right.
I mean, Nigel, what's your take on this one?
Well, I mean, she's referring to Rwanda. I don't think the policy over Rwanda is racist. I do think it's cruel and inhumane, unnecessary and probably breaches...
But what about her describing Britain as a silly little island?
Well, I mean, it's free speech. She can describe...
Oh, yeah, she can say it.
If she wants to say that, that's a matter for her. I think we do...
Do you agree with it?
No, I don't. I wouldn't describe Britain as a silly little island. I do recognise our place in the world, and it's not quite the same place we had, say, 100 years ago. But we're still a world power. We retain that position, but it's slightly on the lower down on the pecking order. So I would put China first, then America, then the EU.
And first for what? China, first for what? Unleashing a virus on the world.
I'm not saying that China's a wonderful country.
Issue.
I'm just saying that if it comes down to which are the most powerful countries
But it's not about power.
Well,
it's not about power, Dawn.
But if
it's about pride.
We're talking about
to reclaim our place. We should be aiming to increase our influence around the world. If we think that our nation has good values, we should be wanting to spread those.
But Dawn, I don't believe we have to be the most powerful country in the world for us to be incredibly proud of what we are and what it means to be British. And that's why I find it so fascinating when left-wing broadcasters give Britain haters a platform, because fundamentally, I believe that sort of rhetoric turns listeners off. And it's why the left, I think, are really going to struggle to gain power in this country again, because they are so unpatriotic.
Look, Natasha's entitled to her opinion.
Yes, I agree with that.
Absolutely.
I agree with that.
And that means we are entitled to debate her opinion as well. But I think...
I'm not trying to cancel her.
No, absolutely. We don't believe in cancelling. And I hate this constant, let someone lose their job because they've got an opinion that you happen to disagree with. Look, but her rhetoric is actually dangerous because it causes more division. And by saying things like that, it causes those who are on either side, the extremists on either side, to justify
Well, I think
their
she's
own
an
hatred.
extremist. I actually think she's an
extremist. It justifies other people's hatred. And surely, as Calvin said... we just need to be working together on stuff now.
Totally. Dawn Neeson, Common Sense, Calvin Robinson, Nigel Nelson, thank you so much. And coming up, as the Archbishop of Canterbury wades into the Rwanda row, has religion gone too woke? Now, this is a very personal debate, actually, for one of my superstar panel. We get stuck into the media buzz at 10:30, where we'll also have a first look at more of tomorrow's newspaper front pages as soon as they land. But first, will the ability to define a woman decide who emerges victorious at the ballot box? Dame Jenny Murray, the legendary former host of Women's Hour, was banned by the BBC from covering trans issues, but freedom of speech reigns here at Dan Wootton tonight. So she's coming up in just a few minutes' time.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, And I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debate, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes & Co.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle and a little bit of levity.
That's the question.
That's two questions, actually.
That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Patrick Christie's.
And I'm Mercy Moroki.
Make sure that you join us Monday to Thursday, 10 a.m. until midday, right here on GB News for To The Point.
We're not afraid to talk about the topics that matter to you or the big topics that always matter.
We cover absolutely everything, from the breaking political stories of the day to law and order, what's going on in the channel. We're not afraid to hold people to account.
We always make sure we include your views on our show.
Indeed, if you're thinking it, you can guarantee that we're saying it. So make sure you join the conversation with us, 10 a.m. until midday, Monday to Thursday, for To The Point on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News. Now, the fight to protect biological women is well and truly on as brave gender-critical activists launch Respect My Sex, If You Want My Ex, the most important feminist movement since the suffragettes, in my opinion. As the feisty campaigners demand politicians define what a biological female is. It's great to have them on my show for their first TV interview last Thursday. My next guest was well ahead of her time on this issue, which should be straightforward, but has become contentious. So in 2020, legendary former Woman's Hour presenter Dame Jenny Murray found herself shunned by the BBC after almost 50 years of service for daring to publicly challenge the mainstream narrative on gender identity. So Jenny first started to feel the BBC leash tightening when she wrote a trailblazing article calling for trans activists just to acknowledge the difference between sex and gender and a trans woman and a woman. She was branded a TERF on social media and sent all kinds of threats, but what shocked her most was the response by the BBC. Given a public ticking off, Jenny was informed that she was not able to chair any discussions on the trans question or the proposed changes to the Gender Recognition Act, a debate listeners were desperately calling out for. And I'm delighted to say that she's away from Auntie's suffocating embrace and is here now to let loose. Dame Jenny Murray, great to have you back. You were certainly ahead of your time on this one, weren't you?
I was. It was 5 years ago?
Or
6 years ago, I wrote that article. And what had made me so cross, this whole question of what is a real woman, you know, is a trans woman a woman? And then the whole language started to change. And it was suddenly chest feeding and not breastfeeding. And I thought, hang on a minute, no, you know, they can't change the language that we have lived with for years. And that's what really made me cross at the beginning. And as things have gone on, I have got crosser and crosser and more surprised, because none of us have been horrible about trans people. We've said, you know, as J.K.
Quite the
Rowling
opposite,
said,
actually.
Absolutely clearly at the beginning, you know, love who you want, go to bed with who you want if they'll have you. We don't care about that, but do be clear that there is a difference between sex and gender, and stop trying to ease us, women who've fought so hard for our rights, out of our safe spaces. And this campaign has the most brilliant title I think I've ever heard. Whoever thought that up was a genius. Respect my sex if you want my ex. In other words, my ex on the ballot paper. Because so many politicians have not really known what to say on this question.
Well, I know
I think you've got some examples.
Yeah, I want to play you some, Jenny, because they're quite shocking. You can react off the back. So have a look at this.
Okay.
She's a woman.
Well, I thought the Prime Minister answered this brilliantly in Prime Minister's Question Times, in Prime Minister's Questions this week, and I fully agree with him.
And so what is your definition of a woman?
As I said, I would exactly agree with what the Prime Minister said at Prime Minister's Question Time.
When we're having a social media or a debate around whether what genitalia someone's got, I think it really debases the serious issues that people face.
A woman can have a penis.
I don't think that discussing this issue in this way helps anyone in the long run.
People are complex, that they are different.
Well, I have to say that there are different definitions legally around what a woman actually is. I mean, you look at the definition within the Equality Act, and I think it just says someone who is adult and female, I think, but then doesn't say how you define either of those things.
Is it transphobic to say only women have a cervix?
Look, is it transphobic? Look, I don't even know how to start answering these questions.
A woman says, I don't know how to answer that question because, of course, only a woman can have a cervix, just as only a man can have a penis. And yes, you know, there will be some trans people who will have genital surgery, but you don't manufacture your sex. Your sex is what you are born with. It's in your chromosomes. It's right the way through your body, and it often determines how people react to you. You know, a lot of expectations are placed on men to be very masculine and manly, and a lot of expectations are placed on women to be very feminine and very female. And not all of us are, regardless of what our sex is. But our sex is our sex. Our gender is how we perceive ourselves or how we're perceived by people outside. And these people really need to be absolutely clear. They're politicians. They will make the laws. We totally depend upon them to make the laws. And we women have fought for years and years and years to get safe spaces. I went to the theatre not very long ago, and I'm not a prude at all. And, you know, I have a husband and 2 sons who are grown up. I know men very, very well. But I went to the toilet, and it was a gender anybody toilet. And it did have individual cubicles, so, you know, you weren't walking past guys who were at a urinal. The door opened as I was coming out of the loo, and this guy was coming in through the door, and he was unzipping his fly. I know. And I thought, that is not right. No. You shouldn't do that.
No. And no one really wants it. That's the bizarre thing. So we're changing society in so many ways, actually, for something that the majority don't want.
I absolutely agree with you. I've been thinking, you know, with this new campaign, I just hope it gets to people in Barnsley, say, which is where I'm from. I can just imagine the response of some of the women on Barnsley Market who say to, let's say, Keir Starmer, you know, who's the leader of the Labour Party, who really didn't know quite what to say about what is a woman. And if one of these women says to him, what is a woman? And he says, well, it's complicated, isn't it? I can just imagine the abuse that's going to come out at him.
Well, how can he be Prime Minister, in all seriousness, while maintaining that position?
Well, he can't. But I think the Labour Party are beginning to be aware that, you know, middle-aged women are the voters that they really need. They're desperate for middle-aged and older women to vote.
Much older, Jen.
And they're going to lose huge numbers of votes if they can't be sensible about the difference between sex and gender.
And that's why I think this campaign is so effective, because the organisers are encouraging folk to, when the council representative or the potential council representative or the person running for MP knocks on your door, just ask them one question. Just say, what is a woman? And if they can't answer adult human female, you probably know you're not going to want to vote for them. But it also gets through their head that they have to look at this issue and take it seriously.
They do, because it has been handled appallingly over a number of years. And I'm just dying for somebody to come and knock on my door.
I know, I want it to happen too, because I'm going to have my phone at the ready. Jenny, can I just ask, finally, about the BBC? Because, of course, I introduced you by talking about that time at the BBC when they made that decision. And it is a long time ago. But the reason I want to touch on it is because I just wonder if, looking back now, you are more convinced that that was the wrong decision, and if the BBC needs to start having these conversations on Women's Hour, which is something that they backed away from.
It's beginning to happen. You know, I listen to the programme a lot still. I didn't for about a year. It was, you know, when you've done something for 33 years and loved every minute of it.
It's odd, isn't it?
It's really hard to listen to somebody else doing it and it being slightly different. But I've started listening again. I've listened to Women's Hour all my life, or presented it. It's always been very much a part of my life, and they are now beginning to discuss these things. And it needs to be talked about. But what we really need is to get sensible trans women with sensible women. And let's have some sort of discussion where we work out how we work through this business, because you cannot have trans women going into changing rooms where there are girls. In fact, the guides today have announced that they are going to change their policy on allowing trans girls to go to camp. So they're looking at it. I do have a feeling that things are just moving in the right direction. Fingers crossed.
Well, look, you were at the forefront of it, Dame Jenny Murray. So it was absolutely brilliant to have you on this, and we'll speak again very soon.
Thank you.
That was the journalist and, of course, the Daily Mail columnist now, Dame Jenny Murray. But coming up, have we found the ultimate proof that great British soaps have gone completely woke? Well, Coronation Street royalty Charlie Lawson weighs in on the axing of gendered categories at the British Soap Awards and uncancelled at 10:40. The next in the media buzz, as Tories are forced to defend their Rwanda plan in the wake of Justin Welby's criticism, has religion gone too woke? This is very personal to Calvin Robinson, who's had his priesthood dreams smashed after being cancelled by the Church of England, and he'll be back to debate with the rest of my superstar panel after the break. More newspaper front pages arriving too. See you soon.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debate, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle and a little bit of levity.
That's the question. That's two questions, actually.
That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Patrick Christie's.
And I'm Mercy Moroki.
Make sure that you join us Monday to Thursday, 10 a.m. until midday, right here on GB News for To The Point.
We're not afraid to talk about the topics that matter to you, or the big topics that always matter.
We cover absolutely everything, from the breaking political stories of the day to law and order, what's going on in the channel. We're not afraid to hold people to account.
We always make sure we include your views on our show.
Indeed, if you're thinking it, you can guarantee that we're saying it. So make sure you join the conversation with us, 10 a.m. until midday, Monday to Thursday for To The Point on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News. Back to tomorrow's news tonight in the Media Buzz. Lots more front pages in. The Daily Telegraph leads with an update from the Ukraine conflict. German Chancellor Olaf Scholz has refused to join an international coalition in sending heavy weaponry to Ukraine as the country entered a new phase of war against Russia in the eastern Donbass region. Scholz said Germany was willing to give financial aid but stopped short of supplying tanks and armoured personnel carriers. Surprise, surprise. We knew this, didn't we? The Guardian leads with Boris apologising for Partygate and quotes critics who call him a man without shame. The Eye continues Boris coverage, but also reports on how British households face a horrific autumn for energy bills. They've got to get rid of the green levies. We'll keep talking about that, of course. The Times reports that Tory whips have ordered all MPs to be in Westminster tomorrow to vote down a motion referring Boris Johnson to a formal investigation by the Commons Privileges Committee for contempt. More on the Media Buzz now with tonight's superstar panel, the former editor and columnist at the Daily Star, Dawn Neeson, the Conservative commentator Calvin Robinson, and the political editor of the Sunday Mirror, Nigel Nelson. Now, extraordinarily, Boris Johnson's government finds itself embroiled in a battle with the Church of England over Priti Patel's people-smuggling, gang-busting Rwanda migrant plan. The former Archbishop of Canterbury, Dr Rowan Williams, yesterday joined his successor, Justin Welby, and the Archbishop of York, Stephen Cottrell, in questioning the morality of the plan, branding it sinful. But today, former Tory Minister Andrea Leadsom hit back at the Church's opposition.
What I do find absolutely abhorrent and inexplicable is the way that many on the opposition benches, and in fact even in the top echelons of the Church of England and in other faiths, who seem to have completely forgotten the images of children lying drowned on our beaches. How can they not seek to try and remedy that appalling situation?
The Church's uncharacteristic and clumsy foray into politics is even more glaring when you consider their treatment of my very own superstar panellist, Calvin Robinson. Now, as you may know, Calvin is currently in theological college training to become a priest, but he believes he is being held back because he's a Conservative who fights for free speech here on GB News. Calvin says the Church cancelled his ordination because of his political stance and the fact he doesn't toe the woke line on issues like transgenderism. So in response, the Diocese of London told GB News, we have a limited number of curacies available each year that are considered on a case-by-case basis. We work with and support ordinance throughout the discernment process to establish the right path for each person. In this instance, it was felt that there was no suitable option available that London could offer. Calvin continues to be a candidate sponsored for ordination. We continue to be willing to work with him to discern the right way forward, and we keep him in our prayers. So, Calvin Robinson, let me come first to you, because, of course, you're at the centre of this story. Do you think the Church is going woke, and do you think that's why they seem to have an issue with you?
They've gone entirely woke, and that is why they have an issue. It's interesting to say we only have a limited number of curacies, where my curacy was taken away. And I've had priests in London reach out and say, we would love to take you on board, we'd love to train you up and be your incumbent. But the bishops have said no. And they've said no because I sit on the sofa and say men need to be more masculine. I say that a woman is a female adult human being. And I say that this country is not institutionally racist, even though there are elements of racism that we need to stamp out. Those things I believe to be facts. Those things I don't believe to be anti-Christian in any way. But they upset the bishops because they're not in line with their woke, liberal, progressive worldview.
But what's so shocking, Calvin, is that you either have a stance as a church, which is that we are apolitical, or you allow people to speak their minds in the way that Welby has
No, you can
done.
only speak your mind if you speak it in the right tone, if you say the right thing. If you say that anything the Conservative government comes out with is racist or xenophobic or cruel and inhumane, and of course that's wrong. What they're saying is, look, we don't like these policies, but they're using the religion, they're twisting the faith to politicise it, and that's wrong. That is sinful.
And Dawn, it seems to be very hypocritical too.
So I've got a bunch of old white guys telling a young black guy that he can't become ordained because he doesn't think that everybody is racist, which sounds kind of racist to me. I just think it's mad. And look, politics and religion have always been intertwined. I mean, you can't really separate them. So, you know, the fact that Welby, you know, who is known for his left-leaning tendencies, went on as he did is no surprise, really. However, what
Doesn't make it right.
It doesn't make it right in any way, shape or form. But what I would like him to do, right, rather than just going on about the negative, is offer, like the church should be doing, one of the richest institutions in this country, offer a positive solution. Yeah. You've got a load of money. Do something useful with it, then.
How many
rather
refugees
than just
is he
having
taking
a go.
into his palace? How many is he taking in?
Well, yeah, exactly, and it's quite a big gaff, isn't it?
I think there's Syrian in the back garden, actually.
And while we've been on air, the Prime Minister said, you know, it's quite interesting that the Archbishop has been more critical of me and my policies than he has been of the invasion of Ukraine, which is quite interesting.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's a fair point.
That is a very good point. Nigel Nelson, though, you say the church should intervene in major political issues.
Absolutely. And what it should be is a broad church, literally, and which is why someone like Calvin should get his curacy. They should have a broad spectrum of opinion. However, yes, the Church of England is part of the political process. It is the established church. It has 26 bishops in the House of Lords. They are parliamentarians and legislators as of right. So when Archbishop Welby made his intervention, I was cheering on the basis that they should be talking about current issues. We may not agree with them, but you should talk about them. And the more they talk about them, the better. The trouble with the Church of England is it's been marching 30 years behind the people it purports to represent. So it took them until 2015 to get a female bishop. We still have no same-sex marriage blessings in church.
Because that's against the faith. It's anti-scriptural. We're not supposed to be chasing societal norms. That's not what the church is for. The church is there to be morally absolute. So as society progresses in all different ways and makes up all different rules, the church should be there as a light in this ever-darkening world around us. You know, on Easter Sunday, GBNews put out a faithful service talking about the resurrection of Christ. The Archbishop of Canterbury got on the airwaves to talk about government policy. What is happening here?
It felt like he exploited Easter for political gain.
Absolutely.
Yes, it's exactly what he did.
But you think that's right?
And got on him for doing it. It is the job of the Archbishop of Canterbury and the Church of England, because church and state are not separated in this country.
We need to get rid of the Lord Spiritual, take the bishops out of the House of Lords. They should not be in the Houses of Parliament. We need to separate church and state.
So you'd be happy to get rid of the Queen, then, on that basis?
Get rid of the Queen?
Yeah, because the danger about taking the bishops out of the House of Lords, which is why it hasn't happened, and why the House of Lords reform has been held up so much, is that you take a plank of the royal family out of the Constitution because the Queen is head of the Church of England. So the worry was, if we were constructing a new democracy somewhere else, and we're all invited there to another country to go and do it, the House of Lords would not be part of it. But every time they've looked at reform, they can't work out what the unintended consequence might be of removing the bishops, and one of those consequences could be to damage the monarchy.
Well, Her Majesty the Queen is the defender of the faith, but Prince Charles has not said he would defend the faith. He said he would defend the faiths, in plural, and that is problematic. So maybe we need to look at the whole situation. The House of Lords needs reform anyway.
OK. Nigel Nelson, Calvin Robertson, Dawn Neeson, do stand by. But now, all aboard the wacky world of Grant Shapps as we admire the Transport Secretary's zany infomercial-style promotion for his Great Rail Sale.
I want to tell you about a great offer coming to you. It's the Great British Rail Sale, offering over 1 million advance tickets to passengers with up to a massive 50% off. Head to Cornwall with its stretches of beautiful sand and crashing waves. Or visit the Lake District, the land of dancing daffodils and full of love from Wordsworth's paradise.
Yeah.
Not quite Judith Chalmers, but I'd definitely buy a train ticket from Mr. Shapps. Meanwhile, Brexit hardman Steve Baker lived up to his name and got pumped for Parliament with an MMA session dedicated to Rishi Sunak.
I want you to imagine that I'm the Chancellor of the Exchequer and I excluded you from Christmas support, OK?
Yep.
What are you going to do for the Chancellor of the Exchequer? Rishi Sunak, this is for you. For us? Yeah, 1, 2, 3.
Safe to say, his performance in the Commons is a lot stronger than the Octagon. Now, coming up, the crowning moment of the show as I coronate today's Greatest Britain and Union Jackass. But next, as the British Soap Awards axe male and female categories, is this more proof the showbiz world is hell-bent on erasing biological sex? Well, Coronation Street royalty Charlie Lawson is uncancelled in just a few seconds after a reminder of a special exclusive interview you won't want to miss on tomorrow's show as my lockdown inquiry continues.
He's the architect of Britain's COVID-19 lockdowns.
These measures are not advice. They are rules and will be enforced.
He's the man who's been battling to save our civil liberties from the very start.
There's absolutely no excuse not to return to normal life immediately.
Now Matt Hancock and Dan Wootton are going head-to-head over the most controversial measures of the pandemic. What regrets, if any, does the former Health Secretary have about his COVID battle plan? Were the lives and livelihoods destroyed by lockdown worth the sacrifice? And has he opened the door to further assaults on our civil liberties?
Everybody now has it in their power to save lives and protect the NHS. Home is now the front line.
It's Matt Hancock's turn to give evidence in the lockdown inquiry.
The true cost of lockdown is about to hit the world hard.
Coming up on Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. to 11 p.m. on GB News.
But it's time now for Uncancelled. And this is where Britain's top commentators speak out on controversial issues without the fear of the cancel culture sweeping the rest of the media. And look, we know soaps are giving into the woke mob with ridiculous storylines and hysterical virtue signalling, and now we have even more proof. ITV bosses have announced a refresh of the annual Soap Awards, making the unconscionable decision, in my opinion, to axe the solo male and female categories in favour of one Best Leading Performer award. The move, which will see many talented actors and actresses miss out on recognition, follows hot on the heels of the abysmal Brit Awards, which scrapped gender classifications and saw Adele beat Ed Sheeran to Artist of the Year. And look how they tanked, with less than 3 million viewers tuning in. The lowest Brit Award ratings ever. It's so disappointing, but entirely predictable to see the Soap Awards and ITV go down this rabbit hole, as the people in charge are all members of London's metropolitan elite who are completely out of touch with the real inequalities facing the British people. Well, weighing in on this now, delighted to say we have soap royalty here. Charlie Lawson, who played Corrie King. Jim McDonald knows all too well that his potty-mouthed and feisty character may not exist in this dystopian woke world. Charlie, no longer a Best Actress and Best Actor award.
Yes,
this is ridiculous, isn't it?
I think that's you're being very fair. Ridiculous is not the words I would use, but I'm not going to use the words I would use. No, I promise I'll be a good boy. I just don't understand why we're getting so bloody silly here. My fear is in all this that well, you're not meant to call women or girls or ladies actresses anymore, which I found completely stupid in the first place. But anyway, you know, now we can't have best male actor and best male female actor. I think what we're gradually and slowly doing is denigrating women and indeed men. I just feel there is absolutely no reason for this. Well, the only reason is that we're following America. or whatever, I presume, because I really don't get it. I think it's incredibly silly. I just don't understand it, Dan. You've interviewed many actresses and many actors over the years, and I have yet to find, in my research since this morning when Lucy phoned me, I have phoned various people, and I've yet to find one who agrees with this. Most of them won't say a bloody word because they're too scared. As you know me, I will, because I'm beyond help anyway, so to speak, and I tell the truth.
We love it that way. But, I know, people are too scared to speak out, aren't they, Charlie, because they're worried that they won't get the work.
Yes, and I mean, that's something that we all live with now. It's just a fact of life. It's whether or not you want to speak the truth, look in the mirror and be proud of your own beliefs, right? And that's my mantra. Above all else, to thine own self be true. And that's how I've lived, and that's how I will continue to live. And I will fight the corner, especially for actresses who've had a hard enough bloody time over the years. And now we're all going to get lumped into a big mixing pot. And I feel, Dan, that this is not a positive thing for the female actresses of our profession, or the female actors, or whatever you're allowed to bloody call them.
Well, it's not, is it? We can say actresses on this show, that's still acceptable, but it's not good, because what's going to happen, Charlie, is what usually happens, and that's that the men tend to dominate the categories. And also, by the way, there is a difference between female actresses and male actors, and that was the whole point of giving them different categories in the first place. It's a different sort of performance.
Of course, you can, let's take two emotions. A highly emotional, upsetting scene involving two women is completely different from a performance of two males going through the same thing. Just as two actresses or female actors or actors who happen to be female having a huge row on screen is completely different from two males. And now everybody is going to be thrown into the mix. Female actresses, whatever you want to bloody call them. I don't mean to make anybody annoyed here, Benjamin and all the rest of you people. But look,
Mr. Butterworth.
Well, God bless him. But it is completely different. And I think we're making a big mistake here. And no offence, Benjamin, I think you're a great wee lad.
No, indeed, I think we are. And Charlie, I think my suspicion is it's to avoid discriminating against a tiny minority of people, a tiny, tiny minority of people who claim that they are something called non-binary. My solution, Charlie, is quite simple, because this came up when Sam Smith said they didn't want to be known as a man anymore. My solution is quite simple. Leave it up to the human being to choose what category they want to enter. So if Sam Smith feels like his latest work is more female, he could have entered the female category. And the same thing could apply to actors and actresses, surely. Leave it up to them if they're non-binary.
How complicated are we getting in the name of Jesus? You know what I mean? It is mind-boggling. And for an old fart like me, who's 61, I'll tell you what, it gets more difficult every year. Look, I praise everybody in the soap awards because I know how hard they work. And I just think this is putting a friggin' spanner in the works, excuse my French. I really do. And I don't mean, I'm sorry to use that language, but I think this is making life just so more complicated for actors and actresses. It's nonsense. It's complete bloody nonsense.
I couldn't agree more. Former Coronation Street actor Charlie Lawson. Charlie, thank you so much. We'll speak again soon. But it's time now to reveal today's greatest Britain and Union Jackass. Superstar panel back with me. Dawn Neeson, your nominee for Greatest Britain, please.
Greatest Britain, I'm going to nominate the Queen for the woman's amazing ability to offer an olive branch to those in her family who've done her wrong. Prince Andrew in one incident, and inviting Harry and Meghan onto the royal balcony during the Platinum Jubilee celebration.
Oh, yeah, and by the way, Prince Harry does the meeting with the Queen. Oh, and then, surprise, surprise, within a few hours, he's recorded a tell-all interview with a US TV network where he speaks about it.
Even more reason why the Queen should win it.
So cynical. Calvin Robinson, your nominee.
Priti Patel MP for the Rwanda plan, for finally having an answer to immigration, to helping save lives across the Channel, and also to offer a deterrent. Thank you.
And Nigel Nelson, your greatest Britain tonight.
Yeah, mine is Sean Pinner, who is the captured British POW who was paraded on Russian TV. Be mad for anyone to go from here to fight in Ukraine, because this is the kind of thing that happens to them. But Sean has lived there for 4 years. He's married to a Ukrainian wife, and it's a really honourable thing to do, to go and fight on behalf of your adopted country and to protect your own wife.
All great nominees, but I'm actually going to go with Calvin today and Priti Patel, because I think her Rwanda plan is both bold and humane. Union Jackass time now. Dawn Neeson, yours.
Right, by extension, I should win this one then. Mine is Sir Keir Starmer for having a hissy fit over the Rwanda migrant plan, but not making so much of a whimper when Rwanda took over sponsoring Arsenal Football Club and indeed enjoying hospitality at the cost of the Rwandan government at the ground. Hypocrisy.
Good point, Dawn. Calvin Robinson, your nominee.
Mine's an honorary jackass. It's Taylor Lorenz. So this is an American journalist for the Washington Post, and she's doxing the libs of TikTok. And all the libs of TikTok do is a Twitter account that just posts madness from TikTok. It exposes them for what they are. It doesn't editorialise, doesn't say anything about it, just posts what they post.
And Nigel Nelson, your nominee.
Mine is the British boxing commentator, Maya Jama, and she resigned from an American boxing channel because she confessed that she didn't really know very much about boxing. I think that she's probably a lesson to all of us to know what you're talking about if you're going on TV.
Blimey, I'm in trouble.
We'll be out of a job, Nigel Nelson. What are you talking about? Well, look, that's definitely not my winner. I'm going to go with Dawn Neeson and Keir Starmer, because that seems like hypocrisy. Rwanda hypocrisy from Keir Starmer. Dawn Neeson, Calvin Robinson, Nigel Nelson, my fabulous superstar panel, thank you so much. Thank you for your company tonight. You're not going to want to miss the show tomorrow. The Lockdown Inquiry with Matt Hancock. We're live again from 9 p.m. Headliners is up now, though. Have a great night. Good night.
Hello again, I'm Stephen Keats, and I've got your latest Met Office forecast for you. Showers from Tuesday generally fading away, with some fog for parts of Northern Ireland, and it's going to be quite a chilly night across the northern half of the UK. So here's the showers across parts of South Wales, the West Country, central southern England, pulling away to the southwest, tending to fizzle out over the next few hours. Some fog patches developing across Northern Ireland with light winds given the showers from earlier today. And for northern Scotland, it's a fairly clear night here. And here's where we'll see the lowest temperatures, a touch of frost, certainly in some sheltered glens, not quite so cold further south. Now, a chilly start in Scotland underneath this ridge of high pressure extending down from Scandinavia. These weather fronts out in the Atlantic, not really making too much in the way of progress eastwards into the UK during Wednesday. So a bright start across Scotland, some sunshine to come here. The fog across Northern Ireland soon lifting through Wednesday morning. And elsewhere, where we've got various areas of cloud, these will tend to break up and tend to disperse as